OK, let's get into this now. All or nothing. The families of victims of the Hillsborough disaster and the Manchester Arena bombing say they cannot support the current form of a new law being designed to stop cover-ups. Campaigners met Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer yesterday in Parliament to press their case that the Hillsborough law should apply to individual employees of MI5, MI6 and GCHQ and leave no public authority exempt. So last week, families bereaved by the Arena attack in 2017 wrote to him saying MI5 had failed them and argued that the proposed law must apply fully to security services. But following their meeting, they said the MP had failed to address their concerns. A public inquiry found MI5 had not given an accurate picture of the key intelligence it held on the suicide bomber who carried out the Arena attack, which killed 22 people and injured hundreds. The Hillsborough Law Now campaign has warned that the draft legislation in its current form could allow intelligence chiefs to hide serious failures behind a vague claim of national security. The government has tabled amendments to the draft law, formerly known as the Public Office Accountability Bill, that would place the same duty of candour onto security service personnel as other public servants. But MI5, MI6 and GCHQ chiefs would have the power to review and determine whether or how to provide any information supplied by agents to inquiries or investigations under the amendments. Government sources said while they had the deepest respect for the families, they had gone as far as they could without compromising national security and that the security services would be subjected to unprecedented scrutiny. I've got Liverpool West Derby MP Ian Byrne with us now. He's been part of the campaign for a Hillsborough law. Good morning, Ian.
Good morning, Claire.
Ian, this feels like a terrible stalemate. So what happens now?
Yeah, it's absolutely gutting, to be honest. You know, we've got so close to the enacting the full Hillsborough law, and yesterday was so disappointing on so many levels. What we've got now is a situation where the government amendment that was laid down yesterday is just not good enough. I, on Friday, had laid down amendments which we'd agreed with the Hillsborough law lawyers, the families, the campaigners, which give what we deem the Hillsborough law to be, which is to ensure that all public servants are under the same levels of duty of candour. And that's what we laid down last week. That's there. That the government can adopt them amendments, but at the moment they put their own amendment down, which, as I said, falls far short. And I sat in the room yesterday speaking to the Manchester Arena bombing families. The Hillsborough families were both there as well. The lawyers, and we were with the civil servants when they announced the government amendments, and I think the air of disappointment and just absolutely gutted every one of us. And then the families went in to see the Prime Minister to make that point that it just was nowhere near good enough. They came out at the end of the meeting with the matter unresolved. And they went on the media and said it as it was, and you've just run the interviews of how they said it's not a Hillsborough law as it stands now.
And the objection to the current bill, the way it's been drafted, is that it could exempt certain agents of the security services from the legal duty of candour.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But it gives the heads of the security services the opportunity to deem whether those agents should be under the duty of candour. And if we use the Manchester Arena bombing inquiry, it took 6 years for MI5 to actually admit the truth. So the whole point of the inquiries is to get to the truth. And if you've got key witnesses who potentially are withholding the truth, but you're not going to get to the truth. And we've seen this with Hillsborough, and the whole point of a Hillsborough law is to change the culture. That's what we fought for so long. Is to change that culture of cover-up. So if terrible things do happen by the state, that the families and the victims will get the truth, and then hopefully justice. We never got justice at Hillsborough, but we got the truth after all them years, and we just can't allow families to go through that again. And that was the message from the Hillsborough families yesterday. And and my absolute plea to the government here is adopt my amendments, adopt the amendments that have been laid down. They've been signed by a number of MPs from the Labour Party, but also a huge number of MPs from across the House. So it's got universal support. Them amendments could be adopted by the government, and then everybody would sign off the Hillsborough Law. But as it stands now, as the families are saying, and myself, I've campaigned for so long for this, and we said the Hillsborough Law, and the Hillsborough Law is what we wanted this to come out as on Friday, on Monday. I can't put into words how difficult it'd be if I had to vote against the government on the Hillsborough Law. It kept me awake last night thinking about that very thing. But that's what. If it's not the Hillsborough Law, what are you supposed to do? You can't vote for that.
I mean, we know just how passionate people are about this, Ian, but isn't it true that there could be a risk to national security if an MI5 agent, for example, had to give evidence in a public inquiry?
The national security framework and the safeguards are totally stay intact. If they have to give evidence potentially in a closed inquiry to the judge only, so the judge knows the truth, so the judge who's chairing or the chair of the inquiry knows the truth. That's honestly, is that so difficult to do? Is that such a huge ask that we actually ask the people involved potentially in a cover-up to tell the truth? And the only way they got to the truth of the Manchester Arena bombing inquiry was when the families and the lawyers said to the judge what MI5 would give us there. The statement, what they give, the corporate statement was untrue. So he had to then bring the agents in, put them under oath, and the story then came out was completely different. So I feel as though this is a huge smokescreen because they don't want the accountability. They don't want that level of accountability. Now, in my humble opinion, and an organisation that has scrutiny and accountability becomes a better organisation if it makes mistakes, if it makes errors, if it does things wrong, and they're flagged up and highlighted, well then it can be rectified. But if you carry on making the same mistakes and you carry on having the ability to cover them up, well then that cycle continues. And that's exactly what happened to Hillsborough. That culture was embedded within the police force, was embedded within state agencies, and they didn't give it a second thought. As soon as they made the mistakes at Hillsborough, the first instinct wasn't to stand up and say, yeah, we made a mistake. The first instinct was, let's cover this up and cover our backsides. And that's when we seen the fight and the toll it took on the families